Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session, Our Most Natural Lever, Are We Ready for a Regenerative World? We believe and we hope that regenerative is not just regeneration of soil, but it also is regeneration of systems, of communities, and of hope itself. And we feel that regenerative is more than a method, it's a mindset. It's about working with nature, not against it. And it's about reducing emissions while at the same time increasing dignity, equity, and resilience. Joining us to explore the real-life impact that a regenerative world can have, I would like to welcome to the stage our first expert speakers. You're already here. And welcome Megan Ryan, Director of Natural Climate Solution Strategy at the National Audubon Society. And welcome Matt Meyer, Owner and Chief Regenerative Renegade at Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed. Welcome both. And I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Jeroen Gerlach, working for Climate Group, so I'll be moderating this session with very much pleasure. I'm the Food and Nature Lead at Climate Group. So Megan and Matt, once again, welcome. I would like to jump in with a question to both of you, a similar question. We are at a moment where the consequences of extractive systems are becoming clearly, with resource scarcity, biodiversity loss, and farmer unrest growing around the world. Yet models like Audubon's bird-friendly certification and regenerative grazing offer glimpses of a different future. From your perspectives in conservation and in ranching, what does a truly regenerative world look like, and what's standing in the way of getting there? Can I start with you, Megan?
Absolutely, and thank you for the question, and thank you for having us. I think, a truly regenerative world is one where ecosystems, economies, and communities thrive. And as Audubon, we put birds at the center of conservation efforts that are aimed at moving us toward that more regenerative world. And that picture of what a regenerative world can look like is starting to take shape here in the US, in our grasslands. Grasslands are the most endangered ecosystem. In the US, we're losing them at a rate of 1 to 2 million acres a year. And with that loss has come a decline in grassland birds. And that's not just meaningful to bird lovers like me and the rest of the Audubon Society, because what has come along with those declines in grassland birds are reductions in soil health, in water availability, impacts to grassland's important role as carbon sinks, impacts to rural economies. So birds can tell us when there's a problem, but they can also point us towards solutions. And in this case, the grassland bird decline pointed us toward developing Audubon's conservation ranching program. And this program works with farmers and ranchers, like Matt and others, to help support them in implementing more regenerative practices on their lands, things like rotational grazing and restoring native grasses that happen to benefit birds, but also sink carbon into soils, have many other ecological and economic benefits. And Audubon is really proud to have brought this certification now to over 120 ranches across the US. We're active in 15 states, and we're now reaching over 3 million acres of land. So when I think about what a regenerative world can look like, these are some of the programs that give me hope, and we are seeing this vision come to life. So for Audubon, that future of a regenerative world, it is certainly about birds and bringing birds back, but it's about so much more. It's about creating a climate-resilient ecosystems and food systems that support economies and communities.
Thanks. And within your collaboration, Matt, can you explain, in your view, what are the important elements and what it's all about?
Yeah, I would say thank you for having me and being a part of this panel. I think I'd start by painting a picture of what a regenerative world doesn't look like, because that is what I discovered having been raised on a farm in central Minnesota, happily leaving, working in food marketing, very conventional food marketing, and then wanting to move my family back to participate and witness some of the lifestyle that I saw growing up. So I moved out of the city and moved back to the farm that I grew up on. And I was shocked to see what I found. all the small multi-species grass-based regenerative farms. They weren't called that then, but in the 60s and 70s, that's what they were. I didn't know that. I just knew that something felt different, and I started looking around, and I saw topsoil washing down into the wetlands. I saw a reduction in pollinators, drastic. I saw a reduction in birds. I saw monoculture crops being rotated. In our area, it's corn and soy, and that's it. Nothing else. No annual grains, no alfalfa. And it just felt different. Well, I had to educate myself on what the differences were and why they existed, and it was due to extractive agricultural practices in an area where they definitely shouldn't have been done and are done, and that was, that's part of the reduction in our grasslands happened in that area. And I learned through some studies that the single biggest thing that I could do to positively impact our food system and our ag system would be to holistically managed grazing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I did that growing up. I could do that. And started to implement that and recapture this land that I was surrounded with and turning it back into grasslands. So over the last 25 years now, I have been able to witness the slow but steady recovery of the land and the pollinators and the birds and the water cycle. Is huge when you get healthy soil, what happens in the water cycle. So that's what it doesn't look like. What it does look like is abundant, diverse grasses, legumes, forbs coming up out of the soil due to proper animal, in this case cow, disturbance. And it happens, nature is so resilient, this happens, she makes this happen, in 5 years you can make a whole bunch of progress in your organic matter, in your water cycle, in the diversity of the plants. And I get to witness that every day. So I'm trying to paint that picture for you on what happens in the regenerative world. The one thing I left out is, in a regenerative world, we really are trying to not kill things. We're trying to let nature express herself in the many ways that she does, that is many times unpredictable and chaotic, but we go out of our way to not kill things. We've created a lot of tools in our ag system to kill things, and now we're learning how to apply the tools that we have in a different way that foster growth and regeneration.
Thank you very much. And if we think of all the long-term benefits that a regenerative world have, Megan, these benefits are not always right away. You cannot always right away see them, feel them, notice them. So, and you cannot reflect them in a market value maybe directly. How can businesses and how can governments, policymakers, better align the economic incentives with the ecological outcomes, basically, to support ranchers like Matt?
Well, I think the regenerative transition, it requires a transition in farming practices, like the ones that Matt described, but it also is about a transition in the systems that support agriculture. So finance, technology, policy, our incentive structures, and we need incentives that reward stewardship. And that could be through certifications like the Audubon Bird-Friendly Land Certification, which can help producers connect to consumers and differentiate in the marketplace. It can help with access to new markets, so that's one approach. And I think there's also potential in environmental markets, whether that's carbon credits or payments for ecosystem services, compensation for biodiversity uplift. All of those certainly offer potential as well. And then we need policy support In the US, policies like our Farm Bill Conservation Innovation Grants have been really helpful to Audubon Conservation Ranching and to our partners and allow us to innovate and test and scale things. So certainly we need that enabling policy environment. And then to support all of this, we need credible data. So our scientists at Audubon and our partners are carefully monitoring the impact of regenerative grazing practices on the landscape, the impacts to birds, the impacts to soil organic carbon, the other types of ecological indicators that can be measured. And that kind of data is what demonstrates the ecological ROI that we think governments and companies can use in better aligning incentives with outcomes that matter.
And that data collection, for instance, also happens, Matt, at your ranch. There's a collaboration there. Yeah.
Yes, it is. I believe wholeheartedly in everything Megan just said, so I won't repeat that. But data is important, and to quantify what these things that are qualitatively said very easily. And Audubon is working on that, measuring carbon and soil, measuring organic matter, other biodiversity measures. But that data needs to be studied and understood so that there isn't disincentives to do what we do. Because right now there are disincentives to have cattle on the land, to even to be a livestock producer. You're the, lack of a better term, redheaded stepchild to grain. And, I get young people calling me like, hey, I want to do what you're doing. I want to get some cattle. I want to start grazing. I see all the benefits. I'm like, okay, do you have land? Because if you don't have land, man, it's going to be really tough. So, we talk about the aging ranchers and all that, but there's just so many barriers, financial barriers to do something like this that really needs to start at the policy level and understanding the data so the argument can be made.
Yeah. And when you talk about collaboration, we need a lot of collaboration, obviously, all of us, to come to that regenerative world. How, in your experience, what does it take to build that genuine collaboration between businesses, between governments, between other stakeholders? How do you do that? Yeah, what does it take?
Well, I love our collaboration with Audubon, and it starts with a common vision. Really, if we have a common vision and people understand the benefits of what we're doing, then we can work to collaborate. I mean, in this project alone, I have over 12 years of collaboration with Audubon on this before it became a program even. And, that's what it takes, and the learning in the collaboration to understand the benefits. And, it's just like any other collaboration. You have to be moving in the same direction, and you have to have passion about moving in that direction, and that it has some urgency to it, which this project, this regenerative agriculture is so urgent that it needs to be addressed, and I'm not sure everybody sees it that way.
Yeah, I think the kind of shared values and shared sense of mission is a really key ingredient to the collaboration. And I would also say that key to collaboration is trust. And building trust starts with listening. So not parachuting in with a plan and prescribing, but really coming at this from a partnership perspective. And that's certainly been true for our Audubon Conservation Ranching program. When we built the program, we started with a lot of deep consultation and listening to ranchers, to ecologists, to ornithologists and animal husbandry experts, and really thinking about building a program that would be reflective of those diverse perspectives. And then today, when our range ecologists are out visiting Matt's farm or one of the other farms in our network, they are doing a lot of listening too. They're sitting down with ranchers and their families and understanding their goals, the particularities of their landscape and their region, and they're tailoring our best practices on what bird-friendly management looks like to the particular goals and priorities of each rancher. And I think building that trust is really key. And I think the other thing we've learned about collaboration is that, thinking about scale and getting a program like Audubon Conservation up to 3 million acres it's really about human scale and human relationships. So it's about thinking about each and every rancher and making sure that they have the technical know-how to be able to implement regenerative grazing practices, the economic support to make sure that this pencils out when they are going to implement this on their landscape, and then the social and cultural support to connect them to a wider group of peers who are also thinking more regeneratively about how they manage their land. So I think if businesses and governments are asking themselves what can they do, it would be great if they would think about those kind of three ingredients. How can they support on the technical, the economic, and then the social and cultural support that really make this work?
Thanks very much. And we have a couple of minutes, so I'm curious, you have a robust collaboration in place. Are you expanding this? So are there ways to share those best practices, spread it, or does it already happen?
Well, we're always onboarding new producers, so that's the easiest way for us to spread it. And we're basically, an education is happening with the whole family that we're working with on the family farmer ranch. So for us, that's an easy answer because, as the market demands product, we need to bring on producers. And as we do that, we add land base and work the whole solution.
Yeah, and from the broader Audubon perspective, we are growing, we're expanding into new states, we're hiring on more range ecologists to do that trust building and collaboration with our ranchers, and Matt's farm was the first farm in Minnesota to be certified to the Audubon certification, and then as his network grows, we're also growing through the reach that he has with the family farms that are in the network. And now the product is sold in how many retail locations is the...
Well, over 1,500 locations. We're on all 50 states distribution and the #1 fresh protein brand in the natural retail channel. So consumers are speaking in that channel anyway, the natural retail channel. We need more voting in the conventional food retailer, but we'll get there. And I got to say, it's also really cool when the Audubon people show up and you're developing your management plan and all that, and they notice some species of birds that are, under special concern, vulnerable species. It's very cool. That's just a cool experience. You feel good.
I can imagine, and thanks for giving this great example of collaboration, of making a regenerative world possible, and also spreading that news. So thank you, Matt, thank you, Megan, and thank you, Audubon, for having been a partner for Climate Week for many years now already. So thank you very much. Thanks. And thanks.
Thank you.
And I'll move over one chair and I'll introduce our second panel. I'm going to sit down. So first we have Aria McLaughlin, if I pronounce correctly, but please correct me if I don't. Aria is the co-founder and executive director of Landcore. Welcome. Yes, yes, thank you. And next we have Michael E. Roberts, and Michael is the President and CEO of First Nations Development Institute. Welcome. Joining as well is Evan Harrison. Evan is the CEO of Kiss the Ground. Welcome. And joining as well is Rebecca Brooks. Yes, and Rebecca is the co-founder and food systems lead at Ambition Loop. Welcome, Rebecca. So I'm going to start off, Michael, with a question to you, if that's okay. Indigenous communities have long practiced regenerative stewardship, yet their voices are often sidelined in mainstream climate and agriculture policy. How can businesses and governments move beyond token engagement to truly center indigenous leadership in shaping regenerative solutions? And what does meaningful partnership look like from your perspective?
First of all, thank you for having me here today. My name is Michael Roberts. My Tlingit name is Teaksane. I'm a Tlingit tribal member and the president and CEO of First Nations Development Institute that does work in economic development and economic justice throughout the United States on Indian reservations. In thinking about this topic today, I was struck by a birthday card my brother Joseph sent me when I turned 45. It said, you turned 45 today, maybe it's time to get your shit together, right? And I say that because by all accounts, the regenerative ag movement is 45 years old this year. And this is where my staff and my board start fearing that I might say it's time for them to get their shit together. But I think that perhaps it might be a bit more positive, a bit more aspirational to think about it a different way. So what is a bigger dream for regenerative ag? And I think it begins with acknowledgement that we can't believe that regenerative ag came about because of some appropriated vision quest by academics inside of Moral Act land grant institutions 45 years ago. That the origins and practices of regenerative ag are those established and practiced by natives and other brown and black folks since time immemorial. So I think regenerative ag needs to first acknowledge its provenance, its history. I think it was the great philosopher Robert Marley who said it best, that if you know your history, then you know where you're coming from. But I think there needs to be a bigger dream for regenerative ag, a fairer dream, a dream that has near-term, it looks beyond the near-term aspirations of climate mitigation and adaptation. That the dream must be a dream of inclusion for native, brown, and black farmers who are still practicing their indigenous ag practices. And if there's hope for this continued mitigation for climate, then it must include land tenure and it must include voice. The dream must include black and brown voices in academic research, and it must include black and brown voices in academic research journals. I tell folks that the voices of black and brown practitioners come with deep spiritual underpinnings and worldviews. And regenerative ag practices without these accompanying worldviews might be compared to agricultural pornography, imitating the acts and movements without the passion and the dedication, and caring not for the long-term racial equity, spiritual and ecological goals, but just looking at another way of getting that economic money shot. I guess, you know, in my view, we need to get beyond the excuses of the regenerative ag movement of being in its youth, in its infancy, and we just can't wait for racial equity and racial justice. So I guess I'll say it now. If we are going to continue along the lines of our hopes and aspirations for climate mitigation through regenerative ag, I think it's time for us to get our shit together as a movement.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Aria, you've been at the forefront of advocating for soil health, not just as an essential element in the fight against climate change, but also as an economic solution. So how to marry those two? What's actually working right now to both get farmers and policymakers on board? And what is still missing?
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here, and thank you, Michael, for grounding us. You know, I think that what's working is soil health, and we're an organization that tries to advance soil health policies and programs that create value for farmers first and foremost, but for businesses and communities of all stripes, and both because these are principles and practices that have been true since time immemorial. This is something that continues to resonate. Also, we like to say that I've yet to meet a farmer or ranch who doesn't want better soil. Who doesn't want healthier soil. So that certainly is a place that resonates. And then politically, personally, I think we're so fortunate to be working on an issue that is fundamentally an issue of common ground. And I see whether it's folks who are excited about the climate benefits or whether it is conservative-leaning folks who are part of the Make America Healthy Again movement, you know, who have been disenfranchised in difficult health journeys and then find their way towards food and agriculture and the sort of promise of health on their plates. And then even in big industry and big business, you know, all these different sectors, there is a way in which soil health can kind of bring folks together. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, Republican Senator Roger Marshall from Kansas was talking about how soil health is probably going to be the only way that big agriculture industry and the MAHA movement unite. And we were like, yes, we've been saying that. That's exactly how we're going to move forward. So it really is. It's both a set of principles and practices. It's also a really, I think, intentional and effective phrase and a way to focus on this work together. And then I will also say, you know, what's working is focusing on the economic solutions, because we have to focus on that, because farming is a business, and for so many farmers and ranchers. And so making sure that we're really presenting a strong economic case, making and then using our businesses and our policies to create new economic incentives, and then, as Matt was saying, to sort of remove some of the barriers is really crucial. And then maybe let me give you one specific. We have really been thinking about the risk-reducing benefits of soil health practices, and that is in part because we have these huge institutions who are in the business of assessing risk, like our agricultural lenders and insurers, but they really haven't had a way to take the risk-reducing benefits into account. You know, if a farmer is better able to weather a flood or a drought because they're building up that beautiful soil sponge, but we just haven't had a way for our big lenders and folks, insurers, to take that into account into their actuarial tables, into their pricing, and so on. And what's, I think, really exciting and promising about this is that we do have a lot of precedent in the private sector. We've known forever that you tick that box if you're a non-smoker for your health insurance, you're more likely to get a lower premium. And we think that the same can be true in agriculture, that farmers could get a good soil discount for reducing the risk on their land, but really for their whole ecosystem, for their neighbors and so on. And you know, what farmer wouldn't want a discount on their crop insurance premium? So we're working to advance that in both private and public sectors. Crop insurance, I think many folks in the room would know, but it's worth saying again, it's such a huge lever of what we grow and how we grow it in this country. It really plays a strong outsized role. So we think that pricing and incentivizing those risk-reducing benefits can go a long way in catalyzing some of this change at scale, and also, frankly, just meeting farmers and ranchers where they're at.
Thank you very much. And maybe moving on to one other element that's important. Evan, with Kiss the Ground, you've helped bring regenerative agriculture into the public consciousness. As the awareness now grows, how do we ensure that the regenerative movement maintains integrity and that it doesn't get diluted by greenwashing? And what role, in that sense, do storytelling and communications and consumer engagement play in all of this?
First of all, thanks for curating such a great group, and I'm the lucky one who gets to take the greenwashing question. It's a good question, and you know, the conversation about how we all need to be rowing in the same direction, of course, but we're all kind of seeing the world from a different yet very relatable lens, and they complement one another each very nicely. At Kiss the Ground, which started as a grassroots effort many years ago, we've really found a lane in a theory of change that's based on creating consumer demand. And if I was sitting here a year ago, I would have told you 4% of the US adult population can even answer a multiple choice question: what is regenerative agriculture? In any way tying it to human and planetary health and healthy soil. That number is now 7%. So in 18 months, awareness has grown from 4% to 7%. There's so much to be hopeful for. Now, let me keep going before I get to the greenwash. Not everybody wants to talk about soil microbiomes and the importance of birds and bees and beavers and butterflies and the things that we all love and geek out about, and why an ecosystem is so important on a farm. But people want to be healthy to the tune of 70% of those polled. They want to buy nutrient-dense foods that make them healthier. So in the spirit of meeting people where they're at, we tell stories of all different shapes and sizes. Instagram-friendly stories.
which catches a lot of people's attention. They move further in, they want to learn more, and they do learn more. Meeting them where they're at. 10-minute mini documentaries. We do that where we really take a story, a farmer's challenge, and we tell that story in detail, always with inspiration and hope. So by telling these stories, we're now reaching 2 million people a month. We're a leading voice who is inclusive and really wants to bring as many people who want to learn why regeneration is a viable solution for how they are adversely affected. A lot of people don't care about climate change, believe it or not, but 70+% care about their health. So when McDonald's announces $200 million like they did this week towards regenerative practices, I'm kind of sitting center court at a tennis match, hearing, oh, that's awful, it's greenwashing. Oh, that's great because that's real money. Yes and yes. My take is we have to work with companies. I've worked for big companies, spent most of my life in the music business. There are always great people at big companies who want to do the right thing, and they need our help in changing the culture internally. And then when they start to reach their consumers with humble, without making bold, grandiose claims, big things start to happen and happen quickly. So I say we have to be careful about who we associate with, and first and foremost, ask that they are humble and responsible with their claims. And I'm seeing some really good practices there. Kiss the Ground. We tell stories every day, and we work with 23 partners from anthropology to wellness to nutrient companies such as Gaia Herbs, who are all doing their version of the right thing, the best they can, and sharing a humble message out to their audiences. And they're all difference makers. So I'm incredibly optimistic about where we're at, and I welcome more companies coming in and starting to talk responsibly about regenerative practices, especially when they're putting their money to the farmers. Because we heard Matt talk about it. Farmers are actually disincentivized right now to do things the way we're talking about. And that's got to change. My personal belief is that direct to consumer, and when consumers start purchasing with regenerative in mind, policy will catch up. But we have so many companies starting to talk about it responsibly now, so many more consumers starting to engage. Policy will catch up, and as Aria mentioned, there are a lot of good conversations going on both sides of the aisle today.
Thank you very much, and I like what you said on, in the end, it doesn't really matter which angle you take, whether it's climate, people's health, whether it's economic benefits, as long as we get where we want to come, all of us together. So, Rebecca, you work at a global level to drive food systems transformation, and as a part of climate action, and that's also something that we've heard many times this climate week before, food and climate are very much intertwined, of course. What are some of the biggest disconnects that you see between ambition and implementation? And how can we better align global goals with local realities? So how can we bring the global goals back to the local real world?
Yes, thanks so much, and great to be here, and I'm a big fan of Kiss the Ground. Yeah, it's a great question. We work quite a lot at the multilateral level in climate fora, which can often feel quite detached and a bit intangible and complex and just, not really related to what's going on the ground. But what we're really trying to do there is to lift the local realities and the local examples into that space, because it really does matter at that global level in terms of setting that normative agenda, setting the political signals that come out of COPs and these multilateral fora, which influences policy and investment decisions at a global level and a national level. And I also work, I wear another hat at the Climate Champions team. So we're really working with the COP presidencies and the high-level champions on elevating an action agenda, which has over the past couple of years through the COP process become a lot more prominent and been elevated. And really that is a platform which is really about showcasing action. So the theory is really elevating what's going on the ground and amplifying that to build that confidence and that pressure for governments to take action and bold policy decisions faster. And I think it's really quite brilliant what the COP30 presidency is doing in Brazil. They're really connecting the presidency agenda with the action agenda. They have in Axes 3 of their action agenda transforming agriculture and food systems, and so we're really working with them to elevate action from farmers, from indigenous peoples, from SMEs, businesses, investors, to show that this transition is happening. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, there's gaps. Yes, there's a lot more work to be done, but it is happening and it is possible. And that right now isn't the dominant narrative. So showing that it is possible and it's happening is what we're working with. I also think it's really important to create platforms for multi-stakeholder dialogues. Often we're working in silos across those stakeholders, farmers, investors, policymakers. And ahead of COP28, we launched the Food Systems Call to Action, which we developed through a consultative process with these stakeholder groups. And we actually found that we're more united than we are divided across a lot of these things. And it's really amplifying that narrative. Yes, there are gaps, and yes, we still need to work through things, but that positive message that we are more united, I think is really important. And then we're also really working to connect the government and policymakers with the non-state actors, so the farmers, indigenous peoples, cities, consumers, all of those involved across the food value chain, because it's really creating those enabling conditions from governments, those incentives that we were talking about, and policy and regulation to really level the playing field and really bring down the green premium from products that are produced in regenerative agroecological ways. So I think we're really looking to Brazil and COP30 to see how we can really use that moment to forward the transition.
Thanks very much. And maybe as an add-on question, as a climate group, we work a lot with subnational governments, states, regions. Do you see a different role for national governments and subnational, regional governments, for instance?
Yeah, well, I think we often see that there's really progressive, bold leadership from cities, city leaders. I think, mayors and city leaders can go a long way and really sort of test and pilot some of the solutions that we're seeing. We work with the climate group, of course, and C40, and you can really see some of the procurement examples coming from cities, school meals. So I think we're really trying to elevate that leadership to then create a sort of ambition loop, if you like, between the cities, the national governments, and the other actors.
Clever use of ambition loop there. Michael, from your opinion, the role of governments, are they helping? Are they hindering? Should there be differences? How do you see the collaboration with governments?
I guess it depends on which governments you're talking about.
Yes, yeah.
So we work with more than 575 tribal governments throughout the United States. And what's really interesting there is that they hold jurisdictional authority over their land bases, which is an amazing asset that they own. And let me give you an example of why that's important, or how that has become important in the past. About 7 years ago, the Navajo Nation passed the first ever junk food tax in the nation. It wasn't Berkeley, California. It wasn't San Francisco. It wasn't Seattle. It wasn't Eugene, Oregon. It wasn't Boulder, Colorado. It was the Navajo Nation, because they had a semi, homogeneous population that could enact legislation that nobody else could. So we think there's a very important role for tribal governments to play in here. We also think that there's an important role for the federal government to play in the reestablishment of regenerative ag from the original innovators' perspective, the black and brown people. We know that the United States government for 100 years invested in reservation boarding schools that went to eliminate the worldviews, the languages, and the life practices, including agriculture, of the indigenous people in this country. $1 billion was invested. And we think there's a role and an obligation for this government to reinvest in those lifeways, those practices, and the regeneration of regenerative ag among those folks.
And in general, and we had a session yesterday where we also talked about the role of governments and their ability to subsidize or not subsidize, so the choices that they make in that. In what sense do you feel, is that improving? Is there more subsidy, for instance, for regenerative? Or I see your face tells me probably not.
I mean, I think there was for a moment, for maybe 3 years in this past administration, federal funding freezes and federal funding cuts have eliminated most of those programs that we see for tribal programs, and that's important. The University of Indiana just came out with a study that showed that Native not-for-profits, unlike national profits in general, receive about 70% of their funding from government sources. Most nonprofits, that number is about 35%. The reason that this number is so high is because the philanthropic sector in this country woefully underinvests in brown and black communities to the tune of maybe 1.5% total in Native and black and brown controlled institutions. This isn't 1% or 1.5% of Foundation's corpuses. This is 1.5% of Foundation's 5% annual distribution. And I don't know what that math is. It's like 6/10,000ths of 1% or something like that. So the government has an important role to play and also a very important obligation to play in this investment.
Thanks. And Avery, if I may go to you, if governments need to step up more, but for many reasons are not doing that to the extent that we want to, are companies, corporates, stepping into that void? Are they stepping up?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, the government has also, I think, recently pulled back, some of the funding for the conservation programs that include these soil health practices as well. So I think just especially at a moment where there is that little bit of a pullback, it's certainly not to call it by that name. I think, that it's not that there aren't going to be advances in the upcoming Farm Bill, but they're certainly not going to have a climate label on them, and nor do they necessarily need to deliver the benefits that they can on the ground. But especially in these times, but in any time, we absolutely we want private sector initiatives and public-private initiatives, and we do see that I think companies, philanthropy, even in investment capital to a certain degree is stepping up. I think we have a bit of a bridge to cross in terms of right now there's, I would say that the vast number of actors that, at least to my eye, are folks who are already pretty values aligned, who at some fundamental level get the importance of making these investments, of coming up with flexible, patient, low interest rate loans that support farmers in diversifying their operations and implementing these soil health practices. And that's wonderful, and we need that. And I think we really need to help transition so that more traditional capital, like just bread and butter, banks across the country and then our insurers to boot, so that they can see that their portfolio will be lower risk, that their loans are less at risk. And the quiet part out loud piece that keeps me up at night is that I think there is a certain segment of investment and finance behind agriculture as a portfolio where folks don't necessarily care if farmers are going out of business because the price of the farmland is sure looking good. So we really get to move beyond a place where this is just an exchange and getting to through education, through hard data that shows that indeed there are risk-reducing benefits of soil health practices, and that can go into a bank's pricing, and that's a saving for them ultimately. And if they pass even a portion of those savings onto the farmer, we really can get somewhere quickly. And I think that that's true of our CPG and food companies as well to some degree.
Thanks. Thank you very much. And Evan, if to build on that, what is or could be the role of public conscience there? Engagement can, customer demand is obviously very important. Can we leverage that in a way that the consumers move towards companies and governments to knock on their door?
I believe the answer is absolutely yes. So I mentioned we went from 4% awareness to 7% awareness in just 18 months. Karen Rodriguez, our COO, is putting out an announcement with a partner, How Good, about the number of companies that are now talking about regenerative practices. And I won't give it away, but I will say it's really inspirational. So if you think about it like this, of the 74% of the people who I said want to buy food that makes them healthy, only 50% read food labels, and 50% of that 50% don't understand what the labels mean, yet their favorite term is not regulated, it's natural. So we've got a gap, and we're filling that gap with ongoing education, and that drives demand. We have CPGs that are getting shelf space now in a very material way, who are doing things the hard way and what I call the right way. They're sourcing fruit from regenerative and from organic farms, and they are they're leaving out the term in other natural flavors. Our partner Spindrift Soda Water, they're getting major shelf space and major distribution now because consumers are speaking. And from that, I believe policy and all good things will happen. But I'm very impatient. So what we do at Kiss the Ground is we put all of our money into getting the movement towards the tipping point, reaching more people where they're at, giving them the education, giving them an opportunity to become advocates. But importantly, from there, not only are we working with companies that are like-minded and want to do the right thing, all of our proceeds go directly to farmers. This year alone, we wrote $500,000 in checks to small and medium-sized farmers, diverse array of farmers across the country, spanning 215 farms. That's going to lead to 73,000 acres being transitioned to regenerative practices. That catches on, and we just keep telling the story. So I believe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a very, very material and impactful way.
Thanks very much. Rebecca, we're almost at time, but I want to ask you, so scaling up regenerative agriculture is connected to many, many topics. It's about finance, it's about potential economic gains, it's about health, it's about regenerative soil. What is the one thing that we need to do to scale it up? And I know this is a very difficult question, but
Yes, that's a very difficult question. I mean, obviously we need multiple things. I think if I was going to pick one, it really is building on the point around finance and, you know, to scale finance for regenerative agriculture. But I think, you know, to get specific there, it's about catalytic finance. It's about longer term patient capital that has a higher risk tolerance. And that's really around philanthropic and other stacks of capital coming together in innovative ways to really do that. So we're seeing quite a lot of that already happening in Brazil. There really is a growing market there, and the catalytic funds that are in place that we're seeing move that. So I would pick that finance system and really getting targeted on that catalytic capital.
thank you very much, and thank you, dear panelists, for your insights in the conversation. A warm applause. And so we're at the end of this session. I also want to thank Megan and Matt, obviously, and Audubon for their help throughout the years with Climate Week. And thank you all for being here. And yeah, it's networking time. And maybe if you have questions to the panelists, then if you're around, then please do. Thank you very much.